Good morning, Central Kentucky. This is Sandra Leslie White shouting out to you from WJMM Studios here outside of Lexington, Kentucky, 99.1 FM, life changing radio. And to those of you listening in around the country, WJMM.com and Facebook Live. Good morning. Good morning. Well, hey, have you ever just been ruined? Have you been ruined or ruined? As Central Kentuckians would say, ruined. Anyway, point is, have you been? Have you been? Is it a good thing to be ruined, or is it a bad thing? Into the show yesterday, talking about being ruined might be the best thing that ever happened to you. If you want to check out that message, you can always check out my Facebook page, Sandra Leslie White Ministries, and look at that message from yesterday on Hosea 4:13 and 14. But you know what they say, the old saying, I bring up these old sayings to let you know how old I am. But whatever doesn't kill you will make you stronger. Okay, what about that? Whatever doesn't kill you, is that the way it goes? Will make you stronger? Could that have an application today for having been ruined? Let's look at it and see if it's a good thing or a bad thing to be ruined in the context of the Holy Bible. As you know, I'm in Hosea now, chapter 4. We are working through the entire book of Hosea this year. So we're in chapter 4, and I'm going to have to gallop through the rest of it, aren't I? I'm going to wrap it up by the end of the year. But today we're going to stay in 4:14 and look at this interesting word, ruined. So the title of the message today, if you're just tuning in, this is Sandra Leslie White. The title of the message is Ruined. So let's look into this in Hosea 4:14, New American Standard Version this morning. It says this: I will not punish your daughters when they play the harlot, or your brides when they commit adultery. For the men themselves go apart with harlots and offer sacrifices with temple prostitutes. So the people without understanding are ruined. All right. Again, if you're just joining in, this is Sandra Leslie White. We're looking at Hosea 4:14 today in the context of the book of Hosea, certainly the chapter 4. As we study the Word of God, I do that in an inductive methodology. We look at that verse, we look at the words within the verse, we try to understand them in their original languages, their context, and move them out into the greater context of the chapter itself and then the book itself and the Bible as a whole. So that's the method to my madness of trying to understand Hosea, and why we go so slowly through the book, because I think it has so much to say. It amazes me that the Word of God is so rich that every day, every morning, there is something fresh and something new from His Word. So today, looking at this word ruined, all right, we know that in the context of chapter 4, God's gone from chapter 1 in dealing with Hosea the prophet and commanding him to marry a wayward wife because the land commits flagrant harlotry. So it says really a wife of harlotry, because the land commits flagrant harlotry. And that sort of sets the tone for the entire book of Hosea. Does that set the tone for our country today? It's a good question, isn't it? So I think there's a lot for us to learn, to glean from Hosea and his prophecy, which is, some would say, a parable, a living parable of God's relationship, Yahweh's relationship with his people in the context of marriage, and Hosea being a holy prophet married to an unholy wife. So when we get to chapter 2, we talk about this dynamic relationship between Yahweh and Gomer, the wayward wife. In chapter 3, he's back into Hosea saying, go after her again. Chapter 4, he's really getting in sort of this, goes from the micro to the macro message to Israel, and then implicates this is the northern kingdom of Israel, as you know, the 10 tribes of the northern kingdom, when supposedly that kingdom split, and then the southern kingdom being Judah and Benjamin. But this is primarily to the northern tribes of Israel in the latter part of the 8th century BC. But we are going to see in tomorrow's show that Judah is implicated. But the point is that, and this idea of being ruined is the last sentence of verse 14. And I'll repeat that if you're just tuning in. Because he goes on to say he won't punish your daughters, when earlier he had, in verse 13, made it clear that your daughters play the harlot, and your brides or your wives. Some translations might say daughters-in-law, but they were playing the harlot along with the temple prostitutes of the day. We went through very carefully, I think, what was really happening on the mountains and on the hills and under the trees, and they had departed from under God, and we've gone through that in previous shows. But today he goes on to say he won't punish the daughters for this harlotry, or the daughters-in-law, brides, when they commit adultery, because he does then certainly indict the men themselves go apart with harlots. And this was a secretive journey. Well, not so secretive. They would take wives up to the mountaintops and then go off with harlots under the trees. So anyway, and offer sacrifices with temple prostitutes. So here's the big so. The people without understanding, and we talked about them earlier in verse 6 of chapter 4, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. And that word knowledge is different from this understanding. The knowledge there is this deep and intimate and abiding and really sensuous knowledge of God, using all the senses. Sensual is perhaps a better adjective there. But using all the senses to know Yahweh, to be fulfilled in Yahweh, regardless of our circumstances. And so we go into now this understanding, people without understanding what is actually happening to them within the context here, as they go from, departing from under their God into flagrant harlotry, into wine, and into drunkenness and gluttony and illicit sex, and it goes on and gets worse and worse until they come down to this point of being ruined. So let's look at that word ruined. I like that word, ruined. That's a correct pronunciation. In the context here, and there's a couple of Hebrew words for that, but I want to look at it, ask the question opening up, is it a good thing or a bad thing to be ruined? That seems like sort of seems to be an obvious answer to that. And, obviously it's a bad thing, to be ruined, right? Well, I don't know. Is it a bad thing to be ruined? Let's look at this. The Hebrew word there, in that sentence of verse 14 of chapter 4, the Hebrew word is damah, D-A-M-A-H, damah. And it means to cease, to rest, to be silent, to be quiet, to make an end, to destroy, to lay waste, to desolate, to be cut off, to perish, to be utterly destroyed. Okay, so that sort of has a nice slow slide, doesn't it? I mean, if you're going to look at what does it mean here, well, to cease, to rest, to be silent, to be quiet, well, that's not so bad. But it can also be used, that same word, to make an end, to destroy, to lay waste, to desolate, to be cut off, to perish. And that seems to be the meaning of that word in this context. And we will note and get into this a little more tomorrow, that there is impending disaster for the Hebrew people. They have gotten so wrapped up in their Canaanite ways of worship, they have become completely syncretistic. that is, they're combining their worship of Yahweh with their worship of Canaanite gods and thinking that that's okay because the Canaanite gods make more immediate promises, and it is part of their culture. This is where they're living. And so I wonder how much of Yahweh still exists. I wonder if it's just really more of an ethnic position for them as Jews, or is it a religious and relational position with Yahweh? It seems to be being slowly but surely destroyed. They're departing from under God into going into under the trees. So it is soon to happen that the Assyrians who are sneaking down from the north are about to destroy them in the not too distant future. So this is the clear warning of destruction. So certainly this is not a good thing to be ruined in this particular context. They are about to be overtaken. And so I still want to talk about the good way to be ruined. I mean, this just seems devastating. It's a strong warning. It's a serious warning. It's explicit. He goes through all the details about what's going on with these guys. He sees everything under the trees. He sees everything under the stars. He sees everything under the sun. He just sees it all. He knows and can judge the thoughts and intentions even of our hearts. So, I don't know who thinks they're getting away with anything with Yahweh. But I love this passage. I immediately thought about this when I thought about being ruined in Isaiah. And I want to close with this. Remember, a little bit later, Isaiah talks about being ruined. Let's look at Isaiah 6:5-7. Again in the New American Standard Version this morning. Then I said, woe is me, for I am ruined, because I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a burning coal in his hand, which he had taken from the altar with tongs. And he touched my mouth with it and said, behold, this has touched your lips, and your iniquity is taken away, and your sin is forgiven. Again, that's Isaiah 6:5-7, a familiar passage of being ruined in the presence of the Lord. So when he says, woe is me, I am ruined, that can be seen in the Hebrew word there. It's interesting, I think, as being undone. This word is mira'atavi. It is a very long Hebrew word, and it means that he is overwhelmingly convicted of his own unworthiness. And with alarm he has seen Yahweh, according to Albert Barnes. For he is undone. He's cut off. The Hebrew word sometimes has that meaning, to be destroyed, ruined, and perished. And he does reference Hosea 10:15. But when we're in the presence of Yahweh, being ruined, being undone is a good thing. So whether we are on our own and being ruined and facing sure destruction, or we're in the presence of Yahweh and being ruined, therein lies the difference and the question of the day. God be with you.